Welcome to episode 28 of Hardcore WoW and Stoic Philosophy, where TeflonStoic ideally makes it to level 60, learning about Stoic philosophy and Roman virtue. Let's begin.
This movement of your body. My second reason is that the remedies that work best are those that are not interrupted. You should not let your peace or the forgetting of your former life be disturbed. Give your eyes time to forget what they have seen, and your ears time to get used to hearing healthier words. Whenever you move from one place to another, you will encounter things that will bring back your old desires. Just as someone trying to get rid of an old love must avoid everything that reminds them of the person they once loved, because nothing grows back as easily as love.
Enjoy the flight.
In the same way, someone who wants to give up all things they used to crave so strongly must turn away both their eyes and ears from the things they have abandoned. Emotions quickly come back to challenge you. At every turn, they will notice something that catches their attention. There is no temptation that does not offer some kind of reward. Greed promises money. Luxury promises a variety of pleasures, and ambition promises a purple robe, applause, and the power that comes from applause. And all that power can do. Vices tempt you with the rewards they offer, but in the life I am talking about, you must live without expecting to be rewarded. A whole lifetime may hardly be enough to bring our vices under control and to make them accept discipline, especially since they have been strengthened by long-term indulgence. And it is even harder if we shorten our brief time by any interruptions. Even constant effort and attention can hardly bring any one task to full completion. If you listen to my advice, think about and practice this: how to welcome death, or even, if the situation calls for it, to invite it. It does not matter whether death comes to us or we go to death. Make yourself believe that all ignorant people are wrong when they say it is a beautiful thing to die one's own death. But no one dies except on their own day. You are not wasting any of your time, because what you leave behind does not belong to you. Farewell. Letter 70. On the proper time to slip the cable. After a long time, I have seen your beloved Pompeii again. This brought me back to the days of my youth. It seemed to me that I could still do all the things I did there when I was young, as if I had only done them a short time ago. We have sailed through life, Lucilius, as if we were on a journey, and just like when we are at sea, as our poet Virgil says, lands and towns are left behind. In the same way, on this journey where time moves so quickly, we leave behind our childhood first, then our youth, and then the period that lies between young adulthood and middle age, which borders on both. Next, we leave behind the best years of old age itself. Last of all, we begin to see the final destination of the human race. Foolish as we are, we believe this destination to be a dangerous reef, but it is the harbor where we must someday arrive, and we can never refuse to enter it. And if a man reaches this harbor in his early years, he has no more right to complain than a sailor who has made a quick voyage. For, as you know, some sailors are tricked and held by sluggish winds and grow weary and sick of the slow-moving calm, while others are quickly carried home by steady winds. You may think the same thing happens to us. Life has carried some men very quickly to the harbor they were destined to reach, even if they delayed along the way, while others it has troubled and worn down. As you know, we should not always cling to such a life. For merely living is not a good thing, but living well is. So the wise man will live as long as he should, not as long as he can. He will consider in what place, with whom, and how he is to live his life, and what he is about to do. He always reflects on the quality of his life, not the quantity. As soon as there are many events in his life that trouble him and disturb his peace of mind, he sets himself free. And this privilege is his, not only when the crisis is upon him, but as soon as fortune seems to be turning against him. Then he carefully considers whether he should or should not end his life because of it. He believes it makes no difference to him whether his
don't have
death
time
is
for
natural
wailing
or
cats.
self-inflicted, whether it comes sooner or later. He does not regard it with fear, as if it were a great loss, but no man can lose very much when there is little left. It is not a question of dying sooner or later, but of dying well or badly. And dying well means escaping the danger of living badly. That is why I consider the words of the well-known Rhodian as most cowardly. This man was thrown into a cage by his tyrant and fed there like some wild animal. And when someone advised him to end his life by starving himself, he replied, "A man may hope for anything while he has life." This may be true, but life should not be bought at any price. No matter how great or well-assured certain rewards may be, I will not strive to gain them at the cost of a shameful admission of weakness. Should I think that fortune has all power over someone who lives, rather than realizes that she has no power over someone who knows how to die? There are times, however, when a man, even though he knows that certain deaths and torture await him, will refrain from hastening his own death, although he would help another to do so. It is foolish to die out of fear of dying. The executioner is upon you. Wait for him. Why rush to meet him? Why take on cruel tasks that belongs to someone else? Do you begrudge your executioner his job, or do you just want to relieve him of it? Socrates could have ended his life by starving himself. He could have died from hunger rather than poison, but instead he spent 30 days in prison awaiting death. Not with the idea that anything might happen, or that there is hope in such a long wait, but to show that he respected the laws and to make the last moments of Socrates an example for his friends. What would have been more foolish than to scorn death and yet fear poison? Scribonia, a woman of the old-fashioned type, was the aunt of Drusus Lebo. This young man was as foolish as he was well-born, with ambitions far greater than anyone could have expected for all time, or for a man like him in any time at all.
Metallurgy?
When Lebo was carried away sick from the said house in his litter with only a small group of followers, since all his relatives had deserted him when he was no longer a criminal but a corpse,
The Stresses of Iron.
he began to consider
Yes,
whether
I know
he should
so.
commit
Quite
suicide or wait for death. Scribonia said to him, "What pleasure do you find in doing another man's job?" But he did not follow her advice. He took his own life. And he was right, after all, because when a man is doomed to die in a few days at his enemy's command, he is really doing another man's job if he continues to live. Therefore, no general rule can be made about whether, when a power beyond our control threatens us with death, we should hasten to death or wait for it. There are many arguments to pull us in either direction. If one death is accompanied by torture and the other is simple and easy, why not choose the latter? Just as I will choose my ship when I'm about to go on a voyage, or my house when I plan to live somewhere. I will choose my death when I am about to leave life. Moreover, just as long drawn-out life does not necessarily mean a better one, a long drawn-out death necessarily means a worse one. There is no time when the soul should be treated with more care than at the moment of death. Let the soul depart in the way it feels driven to go. Whether it seeks the sword, the noose, or some poison, let it proceed and break the chains of its slavery. Every man ought to make his life acceptable to others as well as himself, but his death should be for himself alone. The best kind of death is the one we prefer. It is foolish for men to think one person will say that my actions were not brave enough. Another will say that I was too reckless. A third will say that a different kind of death would have shown more spirit. What you should really think is, I am considering a purpose that has nothing to do with what others say. Your only goal should be to escape from fortune as quickly as possible. Otherwise, there will be no shortage of people who will criticize what you have done. You can find men who claim to be wise, but still say that one should not take their own life, and that it is wrong for a man to cause his own death. They say we should wait for the end that nature has planned. But those who say this do not see that they are closing off the path to freedom. The best thing that eternal law has ever given us is that it allows us only one entrance into life, but many exits. Must I wait for the cruelty of either disease or man when I can depart through the midst of torture and shake off my troubles? This is the one reason why we cannot complain about life. It keeps no one against their will. Humanity is well off because no one is unhappy unless it is their own fault. Live if you want. If not, you may return to where you came from. You have often had blood drawn to relieve headaches. You've had veins cut to reduce your weight. If you want to pierce your heart, You do not need a large wound. A small cut will open the way to that great freedom, and peace of mind can be bought at the cost of a pinprick. What then makes us lazy and sluggish? None of us thinks that one day he must leave this house of life, just like old tenants are kept from moving by fondness for a particular place and by habit, even when they are mistreated. Do you want to be free from the chains of your body? Live in it as if you were about to leave it. Keep thinking that someday you will be deprived of it. Then you will be braver when the time comes to leave.
Where's the globe?
But how can a man think about his own end if he desires as nothing more important for us to consider? Our training and other things may be unnecessary. Our souls have been prepared to face poverty, but our wealth has lasted. We have armed ourselves to scorn pain, but we have been fortunate enough to have healthy bodies, and so have never had to test this virtue. We have taught ourselves to endure bravely the loss of those we love, but fortune has preserved to us all whom we've loved. It is in this one matter only that the day will come which will require us to test our training. You need not think that only great men have had the strength to break free from the bonds of human life. Do not believe that this can only be done by someone like Cato. Cato, who with his hand forced out the spirit he had not been able to free with a sword. No, even men of the lowest rank in life have escaped to safety through a powerful impulse. And when they are not allowed to die in a way that suited them, or to choose their means of death, they have grabbed whatever was at hand and turned objects that were naturally harmless into weapons of their own. For example, there was recently a German in a training school for gladiators who was preparing for the morning exhibition. He withdrew to relieve himself, the only thing he was allowed to do in private, without a guard. While doing so, he grabbed the stick of wood, tipped with the sponge that was used for the lowest purposes, and stuffed it, just as it was, down his throat. In this way, he blocked his windpipe and choked himself to death. That was truly to insult death. Yes, indeed. It was not a very elegant or dignified way to die, but what could be more foolish than to be overly concerned about dying? What a brave man. He certainly deserved to be allowed to choose his fate. How bravely he would have wielded a sword. With what courage he would have thrown himself into the depths of the sea or down a cliff. Cut off from every option, he still found a way to give himself death and a weapon to achieve it. So you can understand that nothing but the will needs to delay death. Let each person judge the actions of this determined man as they like, as long as we all agree on this point,
Stormwind, my friend.
that the worst kind of death is better than the best kind of slavery. Since I started with an example from humble life, I will continue with that sort. For people will hold themselves to higher standards if they see that even the most despised people can despise death. We consider the Catos, the Scipios, and the others whose names we admire as beyond our ability to imitate. But I will now show you that the virtue I speak of is found as often in the gladiators' training school as among the leaders in a civil war. Recently, a gladiator who had been sent out to the morning exhibition was being carried in a cart along with the other prisoners, pretending to be sleepy. He let his head fall so far over that it caught in the spokes of the wheel. Then he held his body in position long enough to break his neck as the wheel turned. So he made his escape using the very cart that was taking him to his punishment. When a man wants to break free and leave, nothing can stop him. It is an open space in which nature guards us. When our situation allows it, we may look around for an easy way out. If you have many opportunities available to free yourself, you can choose the best one. But if a good opportunity is hard to find, take the next best, even if it is something unheard of, something new. If you do not lack the courage, you will not lack the cleverness to die. See how even the lowest class of slave, when driven by suffering, becomes resourceful and finds a way to outsmart even the most watchful guards. A man is truly great if he has not only ordered himself to die, but has also found the means to do so. I promised you more examples from the same games. During the second event in a moxie battle, one of the barbarians drove a spear deep into his throat, a spear that had been given to him to fight his enemy. Why, oh why, he said, have I not escaped all this torture and mockery long ago? Why should I be armed and still wait for death to come? This act was even more remarkable because it taught people that dying is more honorable than killing. What then, if such a spirit can be found in desperate and dangerous men, shouldn't it also be found in those who have trained themselves to face such situations through long meditation and by using reason, which rules over everything? Reason teaches us that fate has many paths but the same end, and that it does not matter at what point the inevitable begins. Reason also advises us to die if we can, in a way that we choose. If this is not possible, she advises us to die in the best way we can and to seize whatever means are available to do so. It is wrong to live by robbery, but on the other hand, it is most noble to die by robbery. Farewell. Letter 71. On the Supreme Good. You keep asking me specific questions, forgetting that a great distance separates us. However, since the value of advice depends mostly on when it is given, by the time my opinion reaches you, the opposite opinion might be better. Advice needs to fit the situation, and our circumstances are constantly changing, or rather being swept along. So advice should be given quickly. Even that might be too late. It should grow while we work, as the saying goes. I want to show you how to find the right method. Whenever you want to know what should be avoided or what should be pursued, think about how it relates to the supreme good, the purpose of your whole life. Everything we do should align with this. No one can put their life in order unless they have already set the main goal of their life. An artist might have all the colors prepared, but they can't create a picture unless they have already decided what they want to paint. The reason we make mistakes is that we all focus on the parts of life, but never on life as a whole. The archer must know what target he is aiming at. Only then can he aim and control the weapon with his skill. Our plans fail because they have no aim. When a person doesn't know what harbor they're heading for, no wind is the right wind. Chance has a big influence on our lives because we live by chance. Sometimes, however, people don't know that they already know certain things, just as we often search for something that is right beside us. We often forget that the supreme good is near us. To understand the nature of this supreme good, you don't need many words or long discussions. It should be pointed out directly, like showing something with your finger, broken down into many parts. What good is there in breaking it up into small pieces when you can simply say, the supreme good is that which is honorable? Besides, and this might surprise you even more, that which is honorable is the only good. All other goods are mixed with impurities and are less valuable. If you can convince yourself of this and come to love virtue with deep devotion, mere liking is not enough. Anything touched by virtue will bring you blessings and prosperity, no matter how. Illness, if you do not curse fortune or give in to the disease. In short, all things that others see as ills will become manageable and will turn out well if you can rise above them. Once you understand that nothing is good except what is honorable, all hardships will earn the right to be called goods, once virtue has made them honorable. Many people think that we Stoics have expectations beyond what human life can offer, and they have a right to think so. They only consider the body, but if they look back at the soul, they will soon measure a person by the standard of God. Wake up, my dear Lucilius, and stop getting caught up in the word games of philosophers who reduce a glorious subject to mere syllables and wear down the soul by teaching fragments. Then you will become like those who discover these teachings instead of those who make philosophy seem difficult rather than great. Socrates, who brought all of philosophy back to rules for living and said that the highest wisdom was knowing the difference between good and evil, said, "Follow these rules if my words mean anything to you, so that you may be happy, and let some people even think you are a fool. Let anyone who wishes insult you and wrong you, but if only virtue stays with you, you will suffer nothing. If you want to be happy, if you truly want to be a good person, let someone despise you. No one can achieve this unless they come to see all goods as equal, because no good exists without that which is honorable, and that which is honorable is always equal." You might say, what then? Is there no difference between Cato being elected praetor and his failure to be elected? Or whether Cato was conquered or victorious in the Battle of Pharsalia? And when Cato couldn't be defeated, even though his side was defeated, wasn't his goodness equal to what it would have been if he had returned victorious to his homeland in a
Always get lost in the abbey.
Of course, it was because it is by the same virtue that bad fortune is overcome and good fortune is managed. Virtue cannot be increased or decreased. It always stays the same. But you might object. Gnaeus Pompey will lose his army. The patricians, the noblest examples of the state, and the leading men of Pompey's party, a synod under arms, will be defeated in a single battle. The ruins of that great oligarchy will be scattered all over the world. One part will fall in Egypt, another in Africa, and another in Spain. And the poor state won't even be allowed the privilege of being ruined once and for all. Yes, all this may happen. Juba's knowledge of every part of his own kingdom might be useless to him, and the brave resolve of his people fighting for their king might be in vain. Even the men of Utica, overwhelmed by their troubles, might waver in their loyalty, and the good fortune that always followed men named Scipio might abandon Scipio in Africa. But long ago, destiny decided that Cato would not come to harm. He was conquered despite all that. Well, you may count this among Cato's failures. Cato will bear with equal strength of heart whatever prevents his victory, just as he bore the loss of his praetorship. The day he lost the election, he spent in amusement. The night he intended to die, he spent reading. He viewed the loss of his praetorship and the loss of his life in the same light. He had convinced himself that he should endure anything that might happen. Why shouldn't he suffer, bravely and calmly, a change in the government? What is free from the risk of change? Neither the earth, nor the sky, nor the whole fabric of our universe, though it is controlled by the hand of God. It won't always stay in its present order. It will be thrown off course in the future. All things move according to their appointed times. They are destined to be born, to grow, and to be destroyed. The stars you see moving above us and this seemingly immovable earth we live on will be consumed and cease to exist. There is nothing that doesn't have its old age. The intervals at which nature sends all these things toward the same goal are simply unequal. Whatever exists will cease to exist, and yet it won't perish, but will be broken down into its elements. To our minds, this process means perishing because we only see what is closest to us. Our sluggish mind tied to the body doesn't reach beyond the boundaries of what we can see. If it did, the mind would face its own end and the end of its possessions with greater courage, knowing that life and death, like the whole universe around us, go in cycles, that whatever has been put together will be broken up again, that whatever has been broken up will be put together again, and that the eternal craftsmanship of God, who controls everything, is working on its task. Therefore, the wise man will say what Marcus Cato would say after reviewing his past life. The whole human race, both those living now and those who will live in the future, is condemned to die. Of all the cities that have ruled the world at any time, and of all that have been the splendid ornaments of empires not their own, people will someday ask where they were, and they will be swept away by various kinds of destruction. Some will be ruined by wars, others will waste away from inactivity and the kind of peace that leads to laziness, or by the vice that destroys even mighty empires, luxury. All these fertile plains will be buried out of sight by a sudden flooding of the sea or the soil. Settling to lower levels will suddenly draw them into a gaping chasm. So why should I be angry or feel sorrow if I go before the general destruction by a tiny bit of time? Great souls should comply with God's will and accept whatever fate the law of the universe has ordained without hesitation. For the soul at death is either sent into a better life, destined to live with the divine in the greater light of calm, or else at least without suffering any harm. It will be mingled with nature again and return to the universe. Therefore Cato's honorable death was no less good than his honorable life. Since virtue cannot be stretched or increased, Socrates used to say that truth and virtue were the same. Just as truth doesn't grow, neither does virtue grow. It has its proper proportions and is complete. You need not wonder, therefore, that all goods are equal, whether they are deliberately chosen or imposed by circumstances. For if you believe that they are unequal, thinking, for example, that bravely enduring...
Sorry guys, we just entered the stocks.
also considerate among the evils. You will say that Socrates was unhappy in his prison. Cato was unhappy when he reopened his wounds with more courage than when he first inflicted them. And Regulus was the most ill-fated of all when he paid the price for keeping his word, even with his enemies. And yet no one, even the most cowardly person, has ever dared to hold such an opinion. Even if they deny that a man like Regulus is happy, they do not say that he is wretched. The earlier academics did indeed admit that a man is happy even amid such tortures, but they didn't admit that he is completely or fully happy. We cannot agree with this view, for unless a man is happy, he has not attained the supreme good, and the supreme good admits no higher degree as long as virtue exists within this man. And adversity does not weaken his virtue, and if even though the body is injured, the virtue remains unarmed. And it does remain unarmed because I understand virtue to be strong and elevated, so that it is stirred by anything that challenges it. This spirit, which noble young men often show when they are deeply moved by the beauty of something honorable, making them despise all the gifts of chance, is certainly infused in us and given to us by wisdom. Wisdom will bring the conviction that there is only one good, that which is honorable, that this good can neither be shortened nor extended, any more than a carpenter's rule, used to test straight lines, can be bent. Any change in the rule means spoiling the straight line. So using the same idea for virtue, we shall say virtue is also straight and does not bend. What can be made more straight than something already rigid? Such is virtue, which judges everything, but nothing judges virtue. And if this rule, virtue cannot be made more straight, neither can the things created by virtue be more straight in one case and less straight in another. They must necessarily match virtue, so they are equal. What, you ask, do you call reclining at banquet and enduring torture equally good? Does this seem surprising to you? You may even be more surprised by the following, that reclining at a banquet is evil, while reclining on the rack is good, if the first act is done shamefully and the latter honorably. It is not the action itself that makes something good or bad, it's the virtue. All acts in which virtue shows itself are the same value. At this moment, the person who measures all men's souls by his own is probably shaking his fist at me because I believe there is an equality between the goods of someone who passes judgment honorably and someone who suffers judgment honorably. Because I believe there is an equality between the goods of someone who celebrates a triumph and someone who, conquered in spirit, is led before the victor's chariot. These critics think that whatever they cannot do themselves is impossible. They judge virtue based on their own weaknesses. Why are you surprised if it helps a person and even pleases them to be burned, wounded, killed, or imprisoned? To a person who loves luxury, a simple life is a punishment. To a lazy person, work is torture. The dandy pities the hard-working man. To the slothful, studies are painful. Similarly, we regard those in which we are all as hard and unbearable, forgetting that it's a torment for many people to abstain from wine or to be forced out of bed at all. These actions aren't naturally difficult. It's we who are soft and weak. We must judge great matters with greatness of soul. Otherwise, what is really our fault will seem to be their fault. It's like how perfectly straight objects, when placed in water, appear to be bent or broken to the viewer. It's not only what you see that matters, but also with what eyes you see it. Our souls are too dull to perceive the truth. But give me a strong-minded young person, they will say that the one who stands unbending under the weight of adversity, who remains superior to fortune, is more fortunate. It's no wonder that someone isn't tossed about when the weather is calm. Reserve your wonder for those who are lifted up when others sink, and keep their footing when their hopes fall. What evil is there in torture and the other things we call hardships? It seems to me that the evil is that the mind sags, bends, and collapses. But none of these things can happen to a sage. He stands tall under any burden. Nothing can defeat him. Nothing that must be endured bothers him. For he doesn't complain that he has been struck by what can strike any man. He knows his own strength. He knows that he was born to carry burdens. I do not remove the wise man from the category of man, nor do I deny him the sense of pain, as though he were a rock that has no feelings. I remember that he is made up of two parts. One part is irrational. It is this part that may be burned or hurt. The other part is rational. It is this part that holds firmly to opinions, is courageous and unconquerable. In the latter lies the supreme good of man. Before this is fully achieved, the mind wavers in uncertainty. Only when it is fully attained is the mind steady and unshakable. So when someone has just begun, or is on their way to the heights and is cultivating virtue, or even if they are close to perfect good and haven't yet completed it, they will sometimes backslide, and there will be a certain slackening of mental effort. For such a person has not yet crossed the uncertain ground. They are still standing in slippery places, but the happy person whose virtue is complete, absorbed unless soaked and steeped in many times. So other teachings can be applied immediately by people's minds once accepted, but this teaching, unless it has gone deep and has sunk in for a long time, and has not just colored, but thoroughly penetrated the soul, will fulfill any of its promises. The matter can be conveyed quickly and in very few words. Virtue is the only good. There is no good without virtue, and virtue itself resides in our nobler part, that is, the rational part. And what will this virtue be? A true and unwavering judgment. From this will spring all mental impulses, and by its guidance every external impedance that stirs our impulses will be clarified. It will be aligned with this judgment to see all things touched by virtue as good and as equally good. Bodily goods are, to be sure, good for the body, but they are not absolutely good. They will indeed have some value, but they will not possess true merit, for they will vary greatly. Some will be less, others greater. We must admit that there are differences even among the followers of wisdom. One person has already made so much progress that they dare to raise their eyes and look fortune in the face, not consistently, for their eyes soon drop dazzled by their overwhelming brightness. Another has made so much progress that they cannot match glances with her, unless they have already reached the summit and are full of confidence. That which is short of perfection must necessarily be unsteady, at times progressing, and at other times slipping or weakening, and it will surely slip back unless it keeps pushing forward. Because if a person slackens even a little bit in effort and commitment, they must fall back. No one can resume their progress at the point where they left off, so let us press on and persevere. There is still much more on the road ahead than we have put behind us. The greatest part of progress is the desire to progress. I fully understand what this task is. It is something I desire, and I desire it with all my heart. I see that you too have been awakened, and are rushing with great eagerness toward infinite beauty. Let us then hurry. Only on these terms will life be a blessing to us. Otherwise, that is delay, and indeed shameful delay, while we busy ourselves with repulsive things. Let us ensure that all time belongs to us, but this cannot happen unless first of all we ourselves begin to belong to us. And when will we finally be able to despise both kinds of fortune? When will we finally, after subduing and controlling all our passions, be able to say, I have conquered? You ask me whom I have conquered, not the Persians, nor the distant Medes, nor any warlike people beyond the Defias. Not these, but greed, ambition, and the fear of death. These have conquered the conquerors of the world. Farewell. Letter 72. On business as the enemy of philosophy. The topic you asked me about used to be clear in my mind and required no thought because I had mastered it so well. But I haven't reviewed it in a while, so it doesn't come back to me easily. I feel like I'm in the same situation as a book whose pages have slipped together from not being used. My mind needs to be opened up. And the things stored there need to be examined from time to time so that they're ready when needed. So let's put this topic off for now, because it requires a lot of effort and care. As soon as I can stay in one place for a while, I'll take up your question. There are certain topics you can write about even while traveling, but there are also topics that require a steady chair, quiet, and seclusion. Still, I should accomplish something even on the days like these, days that are fully occupied from morning till night. There's never a moment when new tasks won't come up. We create them, and that's why one task leads to another. Also, we keep putting off our own plans, saying as soon as I finish this, I'll get down to serious work. Or if I can just get this troublesome matter settled, I'll focus on my studies. The study of philosophy should not be put off until you have free time. Everything else should be set aside so that we can focus on philosophy. Because because even if our lives were extended from childhood to the very end of our days, there still wouldn't be enough time for it. It doesn't matter if you leave philosophy out entirely or study it only occasionally. Either way, you won't make progress. Once you stop, it doesn't stay where it was, but instead it goes back to the beginning, like something that flies apart when it's stretched too tight. We must resist the things that take up our time. We shouldn't try to untangle them, but rather push them out of the way. Indeed, there's never a bad time for meaningful study, yet many people fail to study in the various situations that make study most necessary. They say something will happen to prevent me from studying. No, that's not true for someone whose spirit is happy and alert, no matter what they're doing. It's those who haven't yet reached perfection whose happiness can be interrupted. The joy of a wise person, on the other hand, is a tightly woven fabric torn by no random event or change of fortune. At all times and in all places, the wise person is at peace. The joy depends on nothing external and seeks no gift from others or from fortune. Their happiness is something within themselves. It would leave their soul if it came from the outside, but it is born there. Sometimes an external event may remind them of their mortality, but it's only a light touch and barely scratches the surface. Some trouble might, as I said, brush against them like a breath of wind, but the supreme good of theirs remains unshaken. This is what I mean. There are external problems like pimples and boils that break out on a body that is usually strong and healthy, but there is no deep-seated illness. The difference between a person of perfect wisdom and someone who is still progressing at wisdom is the same as the difference between a healthy person and the one who is recovering from a long, serious illness where health just needs a milder attack of the disease. If the latter person isn't careful, they can immediately relapse and return to the same old problem, but the wise person cannot slip back or fall into any more illness at all. Health of the body is a temporary matter that even the best doctor can't guarantee. Even if they've restored it, in fact, they are often called out of bed to visit the same patient they've treated before. But the mind, once healed, is healed for good. I'll tell you what I mean by health. If the mind is consistent with itself, if it has confidence in itself, if it understands that all things people pray for, all the benefits that are given and sought are not important for a happy life, under these conditions, the mind is healthy. Because anything that can be added to it is incomplete. Anything that can be lost is not lasting, but a person whose happiness is to be lasting should rejoice in what is truly their own. Now, all that the crowd chases after comes and goes. Fortune gives us nothing we can really call our own, but even these gifts of fortune can please us when reason has adjusted them to our liking. For it is reason that makes us even external goods acceptable to us when they would be unpleasant and took them into agreement. Taurus used to use the following comparison. Have you ever seen a dog snapping at pieces of bread or meat that its master tosses to it? Whatever the dog catches, it swallows whole right away and always opens its mouth in the hope of getting more. That's how we are. We stand expectantly, and whatever fortune throws at us, we swallow immediately without really enjoying it, and then we're on edge, frantic for something else to grab. But it's not like that for the wise person. They are satisfied. Even if something comes to them, they accept it carelessly and set it aside. The happiness they enjoy is extremely great, lasting, and truly their own. Assume that a person has good intentions and has made progress, but is still far from the heights. The result is a series of ups and downs. They are sometimes raised to the heavens and sometimes brought down to the ground. For those who lack experience and training, there is no limit how far they can fall. Such a person falls into the chaos of Epicurus, empty and powerless. There is still a third group of people, those who toy with wisdom. They haven't truly grasped it, but they can see it, and they have it within their reach, so to speak. They aren't on dry land yet, but they are already in the harbor. Therefore, considering the great difference between those on the heights and those in depths, and seeing that even those in the middle are at risk of being pulled back into their own ways, we should not give ourselves over to things that occupy our time. They should be shut out because if they get in, they will bring in more distractions with them. Let's resist them from the start. It's better that they never begin than to have to make them stop. Farewell. Letter 73, on Philosophers and Kings. It seems to me a mistake to think that those who have devoted themselves to philosophy are stubborn and rebellious, that they look down on rulers, kings, or those who manage public affairs. On the contrary, no group of people respects rulers more than philosophers do, and this is because rulers provide the greatest gift of all, the ability to enjoy peace and leisure. So those who benefit greatly from the security of the state in terms of living a good life should cherish the ruler like a father. They should do this even more than those restless people who are always in the public eye, who owe a lot to the ruler but also expect a lot from him, and are never satisfied with what they get because their desires grow every time they're fulfilled. To give, they forget about the benefits they've already received. There's no greater flaw in greed than its ingratitude. Besides, no one in public life thinks about the many people they've surpassed. Instead, they think about those who have surpassed them. These people find it less satisfying to see many behind them than annoying to see anyone focus on nobler things. Appreciate those who made it possible for him to do this in peace and security. He is the only one who gives them the things voluntarily, the only one who owes them a great debt without them even knowing. Just as a person honors and respects their teachers, who help them find their way out of early mistakes, the wise person also honors those under whose protection they can put their good ideas into practice. But you might say, other people are also protected by the king's power. That's true. But just as out of a group of people who have all benefited from the same cold weather, someone who had a more valuable cargo during that voyage feels a greater debt to Neptune, the god of the sea. So does the philosopher. A person with more valuable goods is more willing to pay his vow to Neptune than a single passenger, and even among merchants, those dealing in spice carrying cheap merchandise that only serves as ballast for their ship. Similarly, the benefits of peace, which extend to everyone, are more deeply appreciated by those who make good use of it. Many of our citizens find that peace brings them more trouble than war. Do you think that those who spend their peace in drunkenness, lust, or other vices owe as much for the peace they enjoy as we do? No, unless you think that the wise person is so unfair that they believe they owe nothing for the advantages they share with everyone else. I owe a great debt to the sun and the moon, even though they don't rise for me alone. I am personally grateful to the seasons and the god who controls them, even though they aren't specifically arranged for my benefit. The foolish greed of people makes a distinction between what they possess and what they owe, and they believe they don't truly own anything that the public shares. But our philosopher considers nothing more truly their own than what they share with all of humanity. These things wouldn't be common property as they are unless every individual had their share. Even a small share makes one a part. The greatest and truest goods are not divided so that each person has only a small part. They belong entirely to each individual. When food is distributed, people receive only the amount promised to each person. The banquet, the meat distribution, or anything else a person can carry away is divided in parts. But good like peace and freedom are indivisible. They belong entirely to all people just as much as they belong to each person. Therefore, the philosopher thinks about the person who makes it possible for him to use and enjoy these things. The person who exempts him when the state calls for soldiers, guards, defenders of the city walls, and other demands of people. He gives thanks to the leader of the state. This is what philosophy teaches most of all, to honorably acknowledge the debt of benefits received and to honorably repay them. Sometimes the acknowledgement itself is the repayment. Our philosopher will therefore acknowledge that he owes a large debt to the ruler who, through his management and foresight, makes it possible for him to enjoy rich leisure, control of his own time, and a peace that isn't interrupted by public duties. Shepherd, a god gave me this leisure, and he shall be my god forever. If even the simple leisure of our poet owes a great debt to its giver, though its greatness benefits is this, as you can see, he let me turn my cattle out to graze and play whatever tune I pleased on my rustic flute. Then how much more should we value the leisure of the philosopher, which is spent among the gods and makes us like gods? Yes, that's what I mean, Sirius, and I invite you to reach heaven by a shortcut. Sextius used to say that Jupiter had no more power than the good person. Of course, Jupiter has more gifts to offer to people, but when you compare two good people, the one with more wealth isn't necessarily the better one. Just as you wouldn't call one of two equally skilled pilots better simply because a ship is larger and more impressive. In what way is Jupiter superior to our good person? His goodness lasts longer, but the wise person doesn't value himself any less just because his virtues are limited to a shorter time. Or take two wise people, the one who lived longer isn't happier than the one whose virtue is limited to fewer years. Similarly, a god has no advantage over a wise person in terms of happiness, even though he has an advantage in terms of years. Virtue doesn't become greater just because it lasts longer. Jupiter possesses all things, but he has surely given over the possession of them to others. The only use of them which belongs to him is this. He is the cause of their use to all people. The wise person surveys and scorns all the possessions of others as calmly as Jupiter does and regards himself with greater esteem. Because while Jupiter cannot make use of them, the wise person does not wish to do so. Let us therefore believe Sextius when he shows us the path of perfect beauty and says, this is the way to the stars. This is the way, by observing thrift, self-restraint, and courage. The gods are not disdainful or envious. They open the door to you and lend a hand as you climb. Do you marvel that man goes to the gods? God comes to men. He comes even closer. He comes into them. No mind that doesn't have God in it is good. Divine seeds are scattered throughout our mortal bodies. If a good caretaker receives them, they grow up in the likeness of their source and those from which they came. If, however, the caretaker is bad, like barren or swampy soil, he kills the seeds and causes weeds to grow instead of not. Farewell. Letter 74. On virtue as a refuge from worldly distractions. Your letter has given me joy and has stirred me from my laziness. It has also helped me to revive my memory, which has been sluggish for some time. You are right, my dear Lucilius, in believing that the key to a happy life is understanding that the only true good is found in what is honorable. Anyone who thinks other things are good places themselves under the control of fortune and becomes dependent on others. But the person who always defines what is good by what is honorable is happy with the happiness that comes from within. One person is sad when their children die, another is anxious when their children become sick, a third is bitter when their children do something shameful or their reputation is damaged. Some people are tormented by desire for someone else's spouse, while others are tormented by desire for their own. You will find people who are completely upset by losing an election, and others who are troubled by the responsibilities of the offices they have won. But the largest group of unhappy people are those who are driven to despair by the constant fear of death, which can come at any moment. Death can approach from any direction, so these people are like soldiers scouting in enemy territory. They are always looking around in fear and jumping at every sound. Unless someone gets rid of this fear, they live in the heart that is always racing. You can easily remember those who have been exiled and lost their property. You can also remember those who are poor despite their great wealth, which is the most severe kind of poverty. You will recall people who have been shipwrecked or who have experienced something like a shipwreck. People who are calm at ease until the anger or envy of the public, which is the deadly weapon against those in high positions, struck them like a sudden storm or a bolt of lightning. Just as anyone standing near a lightning strike is stunned and feels like they've been hit, so in these sudden disasters, even if only one person is directly affected, everyone else is overwhelmed by fear, and the possibility that they could be next makes them as miserable as the person who was actually hit. Every person is troubled by the sudden misfortunes of others, like birds that panic at the sound of an empty sling. We are frightened by noises as much as by actual blows. No one can be happy if they allow themselves to be ruled by such foolish fears. Nothing can bring happiness unless it also brings calm. A life spent in constant worry is a miserable life. Anyone who has largely given themselves over to the power of fortune has woven a huge web of worries from which they cannot escape. If someone wants to find safety, there is only one path: to despise external things and be content with what is honorable. Those who value anything more than virtue, or believe that anything other than virtue is good, or are reaching out to grab whatever fortune throws their way and are anxiously waiting for her favors. Imagine that fortune is hosting a festival and is throwing down honors, riches, and power to the crowd of people below. Some of these gifts are torn apart by those who tried to snatch them, others are divided up by greedy partnerships, and still others are seized to the great harm of those who managed to grab them. Some people receive these gifts without even trying, while others lose out because they were too eager in their greed. Let the gifts slip from their hands. But none of these people, even those who were lucky enough to grab some treasure, will find their joy lasting until the next day. The wisest person, therefore, as soon as they see the distribution of goods beginning, leave the scene because they know that the cost of small favors is high. No one will fight with them on their way out or hit them as they leave. The fighting happens where the prizes are being handed out. The same goes for the gifts that fortune throws to us. We like fools get excited, tear ourselves apart, and wish we had many hands to grab more. We look around frantically, eager to catch more of the gifts that seem to come too slowly. These gifts excite our desires because they can only reach a few, while everyone is waiting for them. We are eager to intercept them as they fall. We rejoice as if we managed to grab something, and some of us are fooled by the empty hope of grabbing something. We either pay a high price for worthless plunder, which harms us in the process, or we are cheated and left empty-handed. Let us therefore withdraw from this game and leave it to the greedy crowd. Let them chase after these goods that hang above them while they remain in suspense. Whoever wants us to be happy should decide that the only true good is found in what is honorable. If they think anything else is good, they are in the first place unfairly judging providence, because good people often suffer misfortunes, and the time we have in life is short and fleeting compared to the eternity of the universe. Because of complaints like these, we fail to appreciate the gifts of heaven. We complain that they are not always given to us, that they are few, uncertain, and fleeting. As a result, we lose the will to live and fear death. Our plans are in chaos, and no amount of success can satisfy us. The reason for this is that we have not yet reached the ultimate good, which is immeasurable and unsurpassable. Where all desires must end because there is no higher goal behind it. Do you ask why virtue needs something else? Is it because virtue is content with what it has?
All right, thank you, everyone. We have completed, I guess, episode 28 of TeflonStoic's journey to level 60. I'll catch you all later. Be good.